Yep, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Lee. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Broadland District Council's Cabinet meeting on the 3rd of November. As this meeting is run through the virtual system, please be aware of the usual etiquette and rules that we try to apply. So it's useful if you mute yourselves when not talking, just to try and reduce the background noise. And if you wish to speak, if you can raise your hand virtually using the chat, then that's easier for me to spot. But on the other hand, if you want to raise it and wave it in the air like you just don't care, then I'll try and spot you and bring you in at the appropriate time. So without any further ado, we'll just kick off. So we start as usual with the declarations of interest and the roll call just to confirm that we're here. So over to you, James.
Yes, Jim. Councillor Copplestone.
Present, and I would like to declare that I'm a private sector landlord and have properties in Broadland.
Councillor Emsell.
Here, nothing to declare.
Councillor Hempsall.
Here, nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Leggett.
Present, and I have a rental property in Broadland.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Vincent.
Present and no declarations.
And Councillor Wymark.
Present and no declarations.
Thank you. And we have the other members who are present. Councillor Adams.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Kelly.
Present, no declarations.
And Councillor Riley.
Present, private sector landlord, but not in Broadland.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for taking us through that, James. That moves us on then to the Cabinet minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September. Can I take those as being correct, or is there anything in there that anyone wants to update, change, amend, delete? No, I can't see anything being said. Okay, so if we can all just raise our hands to indicate that they're okay, please.
And 7. Yes, that's
unanimous. Yep, you got us, James. Okay, so thank you for that. That's me going off piste again with the method of voting. Sorry, apologies. I'll try and keep to the straight and narrow. Okay, so were there any matters arising for anyone out of the minutes? I think there was perhaps just one update under the Norfolk Strategic Fund that Broadland got allocated the £428,000, I think it was, wasn't it, Joe?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, we have had almost 430,000 from the Norfolk Strategic Fund, and we have agreed as a council to spend that on enterprise facilitation with jobs under pressure. Generally, due to COVID, we think there will be many entrepreneurs out there, and it would be a good start for them to mentor them through, and a small amount of grant money available. And we will work on the details of that scheme. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for just confirming that, Joe. Is there anything for anybody else? I don't think there were that's not on the agenda, so we'll...
If Councillor Hempsall.
Lana, did you want to come in?
Yes, sorry, Chairman. I just put it in the chat box. It's an update that you and I signed off on the MHCLG, the white paper on planning consultation. That was finalised. I have now a PDF that I will circulate to all members, so I'll do that. But effectively, all input from all panels and cabinet was incorporated. So thank you for that.
That's good. So we've told government what to do. So hopefully they'll just follow on from that in the usual way. So that's useful. Okay. So moving on then to public speaking. I don't believe we have any public speaking, do we, James?
There's no public speaking,
No.
Chairman.
Representation from non-cabinet members. Again, I'm relatively relaxed, as you know, about this. So if there are non-cabinet members who wish to have an input or have something to say around a relevant topic, to them, if you just indicate, and I'll try and bring you in at the appropriate time, so that you can have your say. Moving on then to item 7, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Is there anything you want to add at this point, Steve?
Thank you, Chair. No, there's 2 items that I need to come back on where we've got 2 amendments. One's on the member-led grant scheme, and the other one is on the recommendations concerning laptops. So at those 2 points, I'd like to come in, please, Chair.
That's on the budget one, the second one there, then,
on
is
the
it?
budget, yes.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, and again, if there's anything else as we go through, Steve, just let me know, and obviously we can deal with that in that way.
Thank you.
That moves on then to Service Improvement and Efficiency Committee. So Jonathan, do you want to just bring this forward?
Yeah, you've got the minutes there. Obviously, we are making progress on quite a few of our projects. If anybody's got any questions, but they are all moving forward.
Okay, so, and I think there's a couple of those items that we'll receive those minutes, but there's a couple of items coming forward that are on tonight's agenda, aren't there? Like the strategic performance measures and such like, so that's good. Okay, so moving on then to item 9, the wellbeing panel. Over to you, Fran.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like the Cabinet to receive the minutes of the Wellbeing Panel. Both items are discussed tonight under item 17, the vision for best-in-class housing offer and draft allocation scheme, and item 18, which is housing standards enforcement policy. So obviously discuss it in more detail then, but if you can receive them, that'd be good.
Thank you. Well, then we'll receive the minutes. Thank you. That moves on then to the Economic Success Panel. So, sorry, I've missed out the Environmental Excellence Panel. So I've mixed the 2 up there. There you go. Sorry about that. So back to item 10, Environmental Excellence Panel. Over to you, Judy.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like the Cabinet to receive the minutes. I'd just like to mention that we had, since the committee, the panel meeting, we've had the opportunity to actually see an electric refuse vehicle, which was quite impressive, very quiet, and must be much nicer to operate. Unfortunately, it couldn't do the 2 rounds that it would needed to have done. But anyway, it's reassuring to think that the technology is improving, and hopefully we'll be able to have that sometime soon. And the other thing I'd like to add is that there is very shortly going to be a meeting of the Norfolk Waste Partnership. This has been rather in abeyance for all sorts of different reasons. And I hope that once that gets operational again, we'll be seeing some good communication across Norfolk about recycling and reducing waste. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. So we'll receive your minutes, and that moves us on then to the Economic Success Panel. It's been a busy month, hasn't it? So
It has.
Jo,
Thank you, Chair.
over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just asked Cabinet to receive the minutes of the Economic Success Panel of the 12th of October, and the item number 20 on the agenda, future of community grants, is discussed later in our papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll receive those minutes as well. So that's good. So that gets us on to item 12. So over to you. Is it Rodney? Are you picking this one up to start with?
It is indeed me. Thank you, Chair. So this is quite a complicated report. There's lots of different sections in the report. So I think it may be easy if we look at each section in turn, sort of thing, and pause after each section for comments, questions, and indeed you may wish to vote on the recommendations as and when they come up. So,
yeah, that seems a logical way to do it, bearing in mind that there is quite a lot in here. So yes, if we could do that, please, Rodney, as you go through.
So very much the first section of report, section 1, is about laptops. So obviously with the new ways of working, there's a desire to actually roll out laptops for all officers. I'm not proposing to go into detail in each of these sections because otherwise it's a very long agenda tonight. So I think very much the report is just saying we believe there's a need and asking for support for this. Just to mention, at the Ovu Scrutiny Committee, this did raise quite a bit of debate, particularly regard, I think there's a general understanding that the offer to members of the IT is indeed in need of updating as well, but we haven't put that in this report, that request to actually provide funding for member IT, but it is something that the Ovu Scrutiny Committee was very keen on getting in this recommendation here. And I don't know if it's an appropriate point for the chair of the Ovu Scrutiny Committee to raise a comment.
Okay, thank you for that, Rodney. I'll just let the portfolio holder come in first if I can, and then as I said, Steve has raised that he did want to come in on this one. So over to you, Trudy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I was actually at the Overview and Scrutiny meeting as well, so I have heard what they've got to say. With regards to the officer IT, I think this is something we've got to do. We've got to help them do their job, basically, and in the best way they can possibly do it. We've now got lockdown again, potentially another one later. So I think we need to supply them with everything they could possibly need. I know there was a lot of debate around the keyboards. I understand that if they've got one that's their own, they use at home, they can then take it into the office without worrying about the sanitizing them. So I fully support the money going to the budget for that. And perhaps you'd want me to stop there before I reply to the chair of ONS.
Yeah, okay. So again, that as we've highlighted here, and as you've articulated, it does very much sit with the way in which the one team is operating for us. We saw it through the previous lockdown, how well they stepped up, how well they dealt with what was a very, very difficult situation with the kit that we had at the time, and how well that the different teams then supported each other and got appropriate additional kit out and updates and all sorts of stuff going on. Sadly, we now find ourselves going that way again. Fortunately, we are in a much better place with what we have done. Again, we'll be looking at our team to really step up again as they did for us before. But as you rightly say, let's try and make sure that they've got the tools to do the job that they so need to serve our residents. Okay, so Steve, you wanted to come in at this point on this one?
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, and I am actually not in a great place because of technology tonight. The reason for that is that it's actually symptomatic of what ONS was saying. Right now, I'm using my iPad. We've got the draft minutes that have come through from ONS to reflect on as well. I actually can't really refer to those in any detail because to do so, usually I have a laptop on, Zooming, using my own personal laptop, I can get the documents on. I can't do that, as we know, on iPads, which is why we get sent the paperwork hard copy now, so we can read them while we're Zooming. And I've not got my laptop actually is down at the moment, so I can't actually refer to in a verbatim way the minutes. I'm going to have to do this off of memory actually now, and it is part of the problem that we are having with this technology. I think also the minute as well, I'm trying to memorize it from what I've read, clearly isn't the full minute yet. It's yet to be agreed, but there was actually quite a bit of substance and reasoning around the amendment that ONS has put forward on this. And the reason goes all the way back as well to where we were. We went paperless. At that point in time, was provided with iPads, and we're now in a situation where we can't actually function on iPads unless we are provided with paper, which costs money, is sent through the post to us. And we are also invariably using our own laptops to support the work that we do. So there are some real issues with what we've got at the moment. And I know this has been rumbling on for a long time amongst members. It was certainly reflected within ONS. That at some point it was discussed, going back to ONS pre-budget last year with Emma present, that tried to set up a users working party on this. It hasn't happened yet. The issue in terms of the rollout for officers, completely support that. ONS completely understands that, and also, as Trudy said, the need for keyboards, etc. The issue here is that we've got an underspend in terms of COVID. So the figure here of 115 for Broadland, when you prorate that down and put that into a context for members rollout at the same time, you also have to put in, of course, in 2.5 years' time or whatever, we're going to have to change, upgrade the iPads anyway. They've got a cost them of £600-700. So when you factor all these things in, the actual cost on now rolling out laptops for us, which would make us fully functional, it's only somewhere in the region of 30 to 40,000 over a 4-year term. And out of this year's budget, it would only come to about 0.03 of 1%. So this is very small figures. It's already confirmed by Rodney at the meeting as well, because I asked the question, which is in the minutes, that the underspend would cover this as well. So the ONS really see no reason why this should not be rolled out for members as well. It's affordable, doable, doesn't cause us a problem with our budget, and it would give us functionality, and in particular now under this COVID situation, Chair. So that's why we recommended the amendment that is that you have before you under our minutes. And I'll pause there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Yeah, and I think it's worth remembering, perhaps, as you put it, when we went paperless, what the whole purpose of that was, with the introduction of the iPads, was to enable the members to have a safe and secure platform that they could read their papers on, access their papers, and do their emails, and that's served us well. Yes, the software has been a bit clunky from time to time, but that has worked well for us. Obviously, what we found with COVID over the last 6 months is it's presented a different issue with the need to be able to look at a screen while also reading papers, which is a slightly different thing. So it does put us in a different place, perhaps, with some of the requirements. And we'd have seen from the SEAC minutes that we just received that it was discussed at SEAC and the things that were being initially looked at. And it may well be that there's a need to accelerate things for a short-term solution while we look at the long-term necessity. I think, Trudy, you wanted to come back in at this point around where we go.
Yeah, I can come back. I know there's a couple of people in the chat. I don't know if you want them first, or I'll answer now. Really don't mind which way we do it, Chair.
Okay, so I just open the chat and I'll see who they are. Okay, so Jonathan, did you want to just pick up perhaps from the SEAC point of view?
I'll wait. Well, I can wait until after Trudy if you want.
Okay.
So
Tony, I take it you've got the minutes from ONS that you just wanted to support what Steve's saying, is it?
Basically, Chairman, thank you. I want to pick up on a couple of things that both you and Trudy have said, because I do find it very interesting, this, because Trudy said that laptops are essential for officers to do their jobs properly. Not arguing with that whatsoever. I think every single person would agree with that. You said that they need the tools to do the job. So do we. So do members. And they've been promised now, I would think for the last 2 years at least since the last election, that things will improve. We will get the necessary equipment to do our jobs properly. I know you feel that the iPads do that, but they don't, basically. I know, and I think anybody else who's got a county council laptop also knows that laptops are proving far superior to iPads. So I cannot accept your argument that iPads are suitable for members. They're not. And action should be taken now. Now, if you keep kicking this down the road, it will come back to bite you. I promise you that it will come back to bite you. And members are getting extremely frustrated, playing second fiddle, where they've got no problems with officers having the right equipment, none whatsoever. But they're saying, we need the right equipment as well. You kick this down the long grass, it will be there to come back and haunt you. That I can assure you.
Okay, thank you for that, Tony. So over to you, Trudy, then.
Yeah, hopefully I'll answer in a little less aggressive way. Yes, I fully understand the problem. I'm sitting here on an iPad, and I normally have a second iPad if I need to read anything on the screen. So I do appreciate that things have changed, and I did speak to Debbie, and she has already employed somebody to look at this for us. What we've got to be careful of is we don't get 47 different solutions to one problem. So it has got to be looked at properly. We also need to not have some people claiming members' allowance, which is what some might want, and some having the actual whatever we go forward with. So I think there has to be one solution to this, but yes, I agree, it has to be the right one. I am proposing an amendment this evening to item 1. So if you'd like me to read that out now, I know Jonathan wants to come back as well. So as well as having agreeing on item 1, which I'm now calling 111, maybe, I'm proposing a 1.2 to increase the Broadland District Council 2021 budget, IT budget, by 35,000 to fund the potential changes required following a review of members' IT. We wanted to keep the members' IT budget separate so it didn't get swallowed up into the officers' budget. So then we would have a 1.1 and a 1.2 recommendation for number 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. Jonathan, are you coming back on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that obviously I'm not saying I don't understand the members' points. The point is that some members are struggling with the IT. But I think the way we talked about it at Service Improvement and Efficiency was that we were going to review what we needed to make sure that we got it right. You know, I do feel that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's sort of feeling was that what we needed to do was just buy 47 laptops and that would sort all the problems. And I just think that it would be better to look at what we've got, how we use what we've got, what we need, and actually get it so that it does work. And I do want to see every member happy with what we've got, but you know, I think it is better to look at what we've got and what we need to get the solution sorted. And so I agree with what Trudy's just said, that makes good sense to have that additional money available to us, but still go with the original plan, which was to get members in to say to members, what is it that you want and what is it that your machine doesn't do. And some of the time I think there are going to be some training issues where we can explain to people how to use different things to make it work for them. But I agree, we could do with, especially now that we're Zooming all the time, we could do with more equipment. So I'm all for moving forward as we were going to move forward. And I understand the members' frustrations, but we don't want to just get a load of kit that's not going to be usable in 6 months or a year's time.
Okay, so are you seconding that then, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'll second that then.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, I think you're in the right place as far as the positioning with that. Yeah, that we find ourselves in this position where things aren't perhaps working the way that we would all want them to, and the demands have changed from the original ethos. But we should maintain that original ethos, as Trudy was talking about, around there is a solution, and it is the one solution that we all have. That then works within what we need. So the recommendation then is as per 1, and then there's a 1.2, which effectively puts a £35,000 aside for, or for a provision for it, up to that for what's needed for member allowance. And I can't remember the exact wording, so I'm waffling around it, so I apologise for that. Trudy, do you want to just read the words out again, and then we'll go to the vote?
Yeah, to increase the Broadland District Council 2021 IT capital budget by 35,000 to fund the potential changes required following the review of members' IT.
Thank you. That's far more eloquently than I was stumbling over it. Okay, so we've had that proposed and second as item 1 and 1.2. I guess we need to go for roll call, James. So with you.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall. Councillor Leggett. Councillor J. Leggett, sorry.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, James. So that's carried through. Sorry, I've just seen your note in the chat, Steve. Did you just had a point around clarification, which hopefully we can answer before moving on?
Please, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's to Trudy, actually. Trudy, two just points of clarification here. You said that you wanted to have this separated out in terms of a separate budget for members. Rodney confirmed that the underspend on COVID would cover both, doing both, with the figures that we'd talked about there, which pro-rated is actually 54, but we know it's less than that, 54,000. So we know there's that in terms of underspend. So I'm wondering how and why you've arrived at a described figure of 35,000. Have you already looked at something that would come to 35,000? So I'm just trying to clarify why that prescribed figure and why separating it out when we've got an underspend of more than 35,000.
Yeah, no, we haven't looked at anything as yet, so there is no definitive figure. The reason we've kept it separately is so we can actually definitely identify the two different costs when it comes to it. I remember at ONS quite a lot of argument. You did some calculations yourself that you felt the officers' budget of 115,000 was quite high. I know ONS thought that was probably, they were asking for too much kit. I wouldn't expect members to need as much kit as an officer would need to do a full-time job. So that's why the budget for the members' IT that we've come up with is slightly less than the officers' IT budget.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. Again, see that just as Trudy said, it's an arbitrary number. It puts us in a place where there's some funding there to enable the project to move forward. Whether it's enough, whether it's too much, we don't know. But yeah, that can be dealt with at the appropriate time. It also gives the ability to maybe do something that's more deliverable is in the short period of time, while still being mindful for the long term and what's delivered there. So it's just creating some space for a number of things to happen in there. Sorry, Steve, you wanted to come in with something else as well.
What was the time frame, Trudy, on this we're looking at? Or you're looking at?
Debbie has already, I know Debbie has already got the lady who's going to look into it, but Emma's got a hand up, so she'll probably be a bit more precise.
Yeah, well, so we've got someone identified to do it. I just need to sort out the membership of the group, because obviously we don't want it to be too large a group that we'll work with, but we've got a scope sorted and we will start that imminently. I know I've been saying that for a while, so I understand members will feel frustrated with me in this regard, but I have got someone identified to work on this project, and I will make sure I get cross-party representation on the group.
Yeah, and
Right,
also, sorry, Steve, and also with that, Emma, that there's that short-term action, maybe long-term requirement, and balancing those two things, because it's probably worth also including some members from South Norfolk to ensure that we have a view across what would be our future IT platform and the architecture to enable it to work for all if that works. But again, we wouldn't want that to delay any short-term resolution for the Broadland members.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, you had something else?
Right, okay, yeah, because it just wasn't clear there. I'm now picking up that what's being suggested, or what is the base of it, is that there's still the intention to form a members group to see what's needed, and then to come out and then come forward with a plan. And this is what I'm picking up. This is what we've been discussing over a year or so ago. And I think I just need to say this, okay? I don't think there's any need for that. The ONS is very clear around it. We need the iPads to function, and we need the laptops to function. So we're not quite sure what's now going to happen in this group, but it will be an interesting exercise to say the least. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Ken, I noticed you wanted to come in at this point. I'm just conscious we've got to have a very, very long agenda. Is it going to add to this?
Yeah, very quickly. I have to say that, within the group and the councillors, outstanding among IT is Councillor Justine Thomas. Might I heartily recommend her to be one of the team. I can see Emma's got the hands up. There is a few other individuals as well, probably cross-party, who are really, as IT specialists, would be ideal for doing this. And I would like to see it done as quick as possible, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ken. Okay, so moving on then to recommendation 2. Back to you, Trudy. Oh, sorry, no, back to you, Rodney.
Thank you, Chair. Very much. Members will remember that back in July, as a council, we agreed a new ambitious environmental strategy. This section of the report is asking for some resource to allow the appointment of a new environmental strategy coordinator to help drive forward on this agenda. I will let you know we asked a similar request at South Norfolk. They decided yesterday to defer this for the time being in order for them to focus more on the COVID response, but that will not affect your decision. You can still decide if you wish to employ a coordinator to focus particularly on the Broadland's actions. But very much that's one of these differences, that actually as a partnership we can have slightly different decisions and still work together on the overall programme that we're working towards. That was all I was to say on this section.
Thank you for that, Rodney. Over to you, Trudy, and then we'll go to Judy.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, this is a good job we are two separate councils in this way, because this is something we heartily support and have wanted for a long, long time. So I know Judy wants to have a word because it's something close to her heart as well, but I will be proposing item 2.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm delighted to actually see this in some papers, that we're actually going to get some money. My next question will be, what's the action plan like, or the action plan to get the action plan written? Have we got to wait some time to get somebody in post, or is there somebody who's likely to do the job? I know we've got a graduate trainee starting, but this, I believe, is a different level of role.
Okay, Phil, you've got your hand up. Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, just very happy to answer that. Yes, we have got a graduate apprentice in. Her background is an environmental focused degree. She's come in, is very capable, and in some circumstances, I may agree with you, Judy, that actually that sort of level of work would be above a graduate. She's being well supported by those who have drafted the environmental strategy, notably Deborah and Annie Samazi. And she's only been in a couple of weeks, but she's doing a really great work, scoping out an action plan, looking at the resources that are required to deliver that action plan, which I see as foundational work for this other person, the resource that you've just agreed to come in and then seek to implement. So I'd hope to be able to report to you any sort of progress that we've got even in the next couple of weeks, Judy, and perhaps we can do that offline. Yes,
I should be delighted to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, are you seconding that one then, Judy?
Yes, certainly. Yep. I'm happy to second it.
I think picking up on Phil's point there, thank you for the clarity around that, Phil. It'd be great if we could perhaps, maybe the next cabinet or the cabinet after that have some sort of come forward of the update of the environmental strategy and the action plan that then sits with that, so that we get an idea of the delivery. Okay, so this item 2 has been proposed and seconded. So back with you, James.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So that then moves us on to item 3. So back to you, Rodney.
Thank you very much. So this is very much a tidy up exercise following recent decisions on the waste, the way forward with the waste. We're looking to just change the reason we can use this budget in order to support the work on the procurement that is currently going ahead for the BDC waste service. I think that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy, sorry, Trudy, anything you want to add to that?
No, perfectly happy with that, other than the last little bit of the wording in item 3. I'd like the sentence to stop at procurement, so not have and depot projects in there. So I'd like to put that forward, please.
Okay,
as a recommendation.
Thank you for that. So I'll second that then. So that just for speed, has anyone got any comments on this? No? Judy, yes?
Just to say, yes, I think it should be the widest phrasing possible. It's all to do with the procurement.
Indeed, yep. So that's where our focus is, and taking things forward. Okay, so we have item 3 proposed and seconded. Back to you, James, for a roll call.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, James. So that moves on to item 4. Back to you, Rodney.
Thank you very much. As members will be aware, our regulatory services have been under significant pressures due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and there's been additional pressures put on themselves. Therefore, the corporate management team agreed a few weeks ago that actually they should increase their resource by 3 additional posts to actually help resource this work. We felt this was needed as it was such a pressing matter and we needed to deal with swiftly. So we're coming to yourselves for a retrospective agreement that we can do this and that we can fund this from our COVID-19 grant monies.
Okay, thank you. Trudy?
Yeah, this is an easy one. I think this is a given that we need to do this. It's keeping residents safe and allowing officers to get on and do that. So I fully support that. So I put forward that number 4, item 4.
Okay, I'll second that. Is there any questions, comments? No. Okay, so if we take that to the vote, James?
Chairman, Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. So that then moves on to item 5. Back to you again, Rodney.
Thank you. So government awarded us £737,000 in order to cover our costs associated with awarding £150 discounts for working age council tax claimants. But we were also able to use some of that to do a discretionary payments to individuals in extreme hardship. Cabinet on the 16th of June allocated £100,000 out of that £700,000 towards this sort of a discretionary sort of a top-up payments. We haven't used all that, so this report is very much suggesting we should return some of that funding back to cover the cost of the £150 council tax discounts. I shall pass over to Trudy.
Okay, so over to you, Trudy.
Yes, again, this is a reasonably easy one. I think the council tax support we will need to top up. We have got the underspend at the moment on the hardship payments. I think it makes sense to move it back over. That does not in any way mean if more hardship cases came forward that we wouldn't look at them, because we absolutely would. But it's just at the moment we're in the position where the money is needed in one pot more than another pot. So it's simply moving it over at the moment. Thank you. So I put forward item 5.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense on the basis that the £150 have now gone beyond the level that we were left in the fund, so we need to top that back up. And as you rightly say, that we still have our original hardship fund of £10,000 to draw down against, and we've only just gone over that number for the year so far. So I think we should have sufficient in that fund to cover us for the remaining part of the year. But if not, I'm sure Rodney will flag that up and it'll come back to us. Okay, so if I second that one, so is there any comments for anybody else? Nope. Okay, so moving on then, James, back with you for the vote.
Yes, Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, James. That comes us up to item 6. So over to you again, Rodney.
Thank you very much. As you say, things are fast moving, and we'll keep coming back to members as things change for additional funding or where we're not using all the funding we originally anticipated. And this is one where things did change since we actually made the first decision. So to start with, we estimated we were going to lose £431,000 for lost income because we had to close some of our facilities. The government announced that we will be getting a compensation grant to cover some of this. So this is very much adjusting our budgets to take account of the compensation grant we'll be getting from government. That's all I was going to say on the matter.
Okay, thank you for that. Over to you, Trudy.
Yeah, another one of the simpler ones. It is really just adjusting, as Rodney said. These are still, some of them are still going to be guesstimates at the end of the day. But yes, I'm happy to put forward item 6.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, I'll second that one for speed. Again, it's one of those things, as we are in uncertain times, these budgets are going to move around and we just need to keep on top of them and know where our funding is going and how it's being spent. So back to you, James, unless anyone has anything to say. No, can't see anything. So James, over to you for the vote, please.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Okay, so that moves us on then to the next item, item 7. And dare I say, could we possibly take item 8 and 9 maybe with it? Maybe just to speed things up a little bit, Rodney? And to mix it up a little bit, because you're getting into a pattern there.
You're confusing now, look.
Right, so item 7.
7, 8 and 9.
7, 8 and 9.
7, 8
Go
and 9.
on.
Right. So item 7 was very much, we got a new government grant in order to help our coronavirus enforcement activity. This is just asking for members' agreement that actually we can give the Assistant Director for Regulatory the authority to spend this as they see fit in order to actually respond to the need. Item 8 is very much, we had a post for an Assistant Director of Consultancy when we established the one team. This post has only been filled for a very short time. The responsibilities of this role have actually been reassigned to the Chief of Staff and their team, so there's no longer the need for this post, so we're just asking member approval to remove this from the establishment. And item 9 in the papers, we're trying to give an update on the financial strategy in order to make sure we understand where we are as a council. And as shown in paragraph 6.7, as at June, we're expecting to make a surplus of about £62,000. as at now, we're expecting a surplus of about £100,000. So very much we are still in line with delivering a balanced budget for this year. Again, I shall pause there for comments and questions.
Okay, so thank you, Rodney. So back over to you, Trudy, followed by Judy wants to come in on item 7, I believe. So Trudy, with you.
Yeah, just to say, I'm glad you took 7, 8 and 9 together, because I'm quite happy to put those forward. The updated strategy, there isn't a lot of change, but as Rodney said, it's just showing slightly better for 2021. But other than that, yes, I'll propose items 7, 8 and 9, subject to Judy's comment. Thank you.
Okay, over to Judy.
Sorry. Yeah, my question is, will we get a report? I'm sure I will, but will the Cabinet get a report on what this is spent on?
Okay, is that with you, Nick? Are you able to answer that one, or does that go with you, Rodney?
Good evening. From an operational point of view, very happy to provide you with a report summarising the intervention and enforcement and advice and support action that we take with businesses. We will be looking to target that quite closely. Of course, we've got a very high compliance rate with businesses, but it's important we have a level playing field and we don't have anybody who is not complying with the rules. We don't want to see disease transmitted in that way. So happy to provide you with an operational report back.
Thank you for confirming that. That would be useful, just to again to be able to close the loop and see how the money has been spent in a way that again has benefited and protected the local residents of Broadland. Okay, so if I second that, is those 3 items 7, 8 and 9. Are there any other questions on 7, 8 or 9, or we'll go for the vote? No, I can't see anything. So James, with you for 7, 8 and 9, please.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsell.
4.
Councillor Hempsell.
4, 4 and 4.
Councillor Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. So that then moves us on to item 10. Back with you, Rodney.
Thank you very much. I think this is a case that we've been overtaken by events on this area. So this report is very much written when we had the discretionary local lockdown grants, very much applying for areas that are in tier 3 or the higher tiers for the lockdown. Obviously at the weekend, we've now moved to a national lockdown from Thursday, and there's been announcements about additional funding being provided to councils to help support the local businesses. So very much we need to respond to this quickly. So I believe we'll be asking for a slight change to this recommendation in order to actually follow the new guidance on who's been entitled to these grants. But it is a fast moving piece of work. I think I've had 4 emails this afternoon on the new regulations that are coming in. So please bear with us, as we can't give you a complete update on what they're going to be spent on at the moment. Literally the guidance is coming in as we speak.
Okay, thank you for that, Rodney. And yeah, we fully understand that, as I say, the times are uncertain and things are moving quickly, and we expect them to continue so over the coming weeks. Trudy?
Yeah, so following, as Rodney has just said, I have had an email from Rodney, and what we're suggesting now with item 10, I know Emma's probably got the proper wording, but we're taking away the word discretionary. So we're just having lockdown grants in general, so it covers all of them. And the powers would go to both economic success portfolio holder, finance portfolio holder and leader.
Okay, so thank you for that. So it's the removal of the word discretionary and the introduction of the finance portfolio holder and the leader as part of the consultation. Joe, you wanted to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is really good news for local councils. Not only will we be getting the local restriction support grant to help businesses in our area which are required to close due to restrictions, and those are all outlined in 4.21. with the rateable values and the amounts. Also, councils are being given in England 1.1 billion, and our allocation in Broadland for this additional restriction grant will be just over 2.6 million. And this will be rolled out during the next 18 months. And I'm very pleased to say that the portfolio holder for finance and the leader will also be in this discussion on how we decide the criteria of this. So yes, I'm happy. I don't know if Emma has the wording for me. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah,
Emma, I guess it's over to you for the wording.
Yeah, to confirm. Would you like me to say what I think we're at?
Please, and also we've lost Lana, so again, if you can just have an eye out for her trying to get back in through the waiting room, that would be appreciated. So over to you, Emma.
Okay, so to make it a slightly more straightforward recommendation, I would propose that we say that the approval of criteria for the distribution of lockdown grants be delegated to the portfolio holder for finance in conjunction with the portfolio holder for, oh Joe, your title's gone completely out of my head.
Economic development.
Lovely, thank you. Sorry, the leader and the assistant director of economic growth would be my proposal, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. You missed a chance there, Joe. You could have renamed yourself. Okay, so that's the recommendation. Are you seconding that then, Joe?
Yes, I will second that. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or can we move on to the vote? Okay, so James, back with you.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
Can't vote, wasn't in the room, sorry. Okay. I literally just regained connection.
Right. Councillor Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, thank you for that, James. And thank you everyone for perseverance in working our way through. There was quite a lot in one item there. So thank you for that. And again, thank you, Rodney, and your team for keeping us on the straight and narrow with our finances, as they're a bit of a moving feast with what's going on and what's happening at the moment. Okay, so moving on then to item 13, which is earmarked reserves. Back with you, Rodney.
It's indeed. Thank you, Chair. So it's good practice for members to review our reserves every so often, and therefore we're coming to members of Cabinet just to very much give them the opportunity to look at what reserves the Council holds and whether we want to change, repurpose or create any new reserves. This is an area that is very much within your discretion to decide which reserves you would like for what policy areas you wish to support. And very much will come with some proposals in section 3 on page 54, very much suggesting you may wish to consider closing 3 reserves and reducing the amount in the business rates reserve. Suggesting you may wish to look at merging the Economic Success Fund and the Broadland Growth Fund. And again, you may wish to consider setting up 2 new reserves, one very much linked to the refuse contract and potential need of buying a new fleet of refuse vehicles, and also a second reserve potentially looking for on new ways of working, on investments in IT and accommodation going forward. But these are very much discretionary for members to decide how they wish to earmark their reserves.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Rodney. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to just take that pause and go through the reserves and see what's needed and what's also needs to be provision made for the future. So thank you for that. Trudy, over to you.
Yeah, not sure how you want to do this one at a time, or me go through all 4, or how you want to do it.
I think we probably just need to do them one at a time, don't we?
Yeah, number 1 is okay. It's easy. I think we're more than happy that they're not reserves we've used for a while, and they're not reserves we're going to use. So I think it's quite happy for the closure of all of those.
Yeah, okay. And perhaps can we do number 2 at the same time then?
We can do number 2. What I was considering is we should leave the 703 in with the other circa 2 million. Still concerned regarding the NHS appeal and what that might bring forward if they were to be successful on appeal. So I think at this time it'd be quite prudent to leave the 703 in the reserve that already exists. So there's your 1 and 2, if you want to just take those 2 together.
Okay, thank you for that. And yeah, it sort of perhaps makes sense to review the business rate reserve once we know the outcome of the NHS, assuming it is within the next a year. But who knows? Okay, so I'll second those 2 items. So we've got item 1, A, B, and C, and item 2. Any questions from anyone?
Just on item 2, I think you're not accepting item 2, isn't it? That's what you're wanting to vote on.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, we want to leave it where it is.
Yeah, so effectively we could just say that we're deleting item 2 or not approving item 2. So I guess that's the phrase we need to do. We need to do 1 and 2 and do it that way. Okay. Doesn't look like there are any other questions. So James, with you for item 1 and item 2.
Councillor Copplestone.
So I'm for item 1 and I'm rejecting item 2. I think that's correct, isn't it? Thank you.
That is correct. Councillor Ensel.
For 1, against 2.
Councillor Hempsel.
For 1, delete 2.
Councillor Joe Leggett.
For 1, against 2.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
For 1, against 2.
Councillor Vincent.
For 1, against 2.
And Councillor Wymark.
For 1 and against 2.
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, thank you for that. So back with you, Rodney. Anything you want to say on the Economic Success Fund or Broadland Growth Reserve, or have you said it all already and I can pass over to Trudy?
I think it is Trudy. I think these are ones are very much your discretion as to where you want to target for economic growth in the area.
Okay, thank you for that. Trudy?
Yeah, thank you. This one is a little bit more tricky because I know that the Economic Success Fund within Broadland has been used in the past for training. I know that as a council, that is something we're extremely keen on. There isn't training in place at the moment, but I think Joe will want to come in on this. I think that is something we don't want to see disappear from Broadland. I would therefore suggest that we reject that. We actually keep both of those funds separate, and Joe might give an update on the training. So I would propose we reject item 3.
Okay, thank you for that. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Economic Success Fund has been used to support SMEs in Broadland over all the years that I've been portfolio holder. In Broadland, we give new businesses a £750 support grant. Often that is used to help train these young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs starting up their businesses. And after a year, another £750 is given. But as Trudy was saying, this is often used for business training, so they know their responsibilities as business owners. So I would like that to be kept quite separate from the Broadland Growth Reserve, which it has a different purpose completely. While we're looking at, can I expand slightly about the bridge maintenance at this point, Chair, or would you like me to hold off that one?
I think that comes in a later one, doesn't it? So
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so are you seconding the removal of that one then? As in we keep those two as 2 separate ones?
Yes, please, Chair, yes.
Okay, so that's a slightly different recommendation there, so that amends that recommendation. Yeah, I think like you, that it's important that we recognise the need to support the SMEs and the Economic Success Fund in the way that's been used, whereas the Broadland Growth Reserve is very much about the supporting the growth of the area and enabling that to come forward. So they are fundamentally different in what they're targeting. Okay, so are there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll ask James to progress the vote. No, can't see anything. So James, over to you. If you could progress the vote for us, please.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Copplestone.
I'm against merging the two funds. Thank you.
Councillor Emsall.
Against merging.
Councillor Hempsall.
Against.
Councillor J. Leggett.
Against.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Against.
Councillor Vincent.
Against.
And Councillor Wymark.
Against.
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, thank you, James. Back to you, Trudy, with the creation of the new reserves.
Or Rodney.
Or Rodney. Rodney, do you want to say anything on these? He's going to say it's up to you, Trudy.
Again,
how hot is this potato?
To decide if they wish to earmark extra reserves or not. I say we are aware there are some big spends coming down the line, particularly with the waste. But again, it is a member's decision.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are aware we do need to earmark reserves. I'm going to bounce this back a bit around governance, I'm afraid. We've looked into the governance around the different pots of money, and I would like this just to come back, if possible, with some further clarification on. I noticed that it actually says that after a specific project is agreed, it would come back to Cabinet. But there is this little mention of within council policy that actually I don't really know what that means fully. So especially around things like the refuse service, I think that's a little bit of a woolly comment. So I would prefer, if it's okay, to put it forward that we actually come back with a bit more about governance before we make the final decision on that, if that's okay. So that's what I would recommend, however you want to word that, Emma.
Okay, so thank you for that, Trudy. Are you okay with the wording on that, Emma?
I think what you're saying at this point in time is you're not ready to make a decision on that. You'd like us to do further work, so you're not agreeing to that proposal at the moment.
That's correct.
So you're rejecting that proposal at
Yeah.
present, but asking us to do more. Can I just clarify on that one, Trudy, in terms of the governance? What is it you're looking for? Just so that we know that we get the right thing for you and we land this for you.
Yeah, well, as I said, especially around something like the waste, obviously it would come to Cabinet, we'd make the decision, but I wouldn't then like to think that there's no say around where that money is going in stages, that it's just able to just go.
What in terms of this reserve?
Perhaps I can come back on this
one.
Yeah. So because the council constitution very much says that actually the use of the reserves, I can allocate the reserves provided it's in line with the council policy. So I think we're just looking to make sure that actually we're a bit more clear on actually who's got the authority to agree to spend these reserves when the time comes. So very much it's a bit clearer than just saying if it's in line with policy we can do it. We just want to make sure that actually we've got that agreement that if we apply these, we'll come back in consultation with a member or potentially to Cabinet before we apply these reserves.
Yeah, just because this is big spends and we just want to be really careful here.
I think can I just add to
Please
that
do,
as well?
Emma. Yeah.
Thank you. So in terms of that, any spend, this is your reserve that sits there for these kind of rainy day, well, they're not rainy day project, but that kind of work. So that would go through the normal delegations that we have within the constitution. So if it was a spend of X amount, then that would be coming through the right channel there. So that doesn't mean that you're saying there you are, there's 7 million, go and spend it however you want. The spend of that would need to be in line with the delegations within the constitution and how they stand at present. So it's not sort of a green light for us to go and spend 7 million on refuse services, we would then need to come back in line with the delegations that already exist within the constitution. Does that help?
Yeah, so that helps. I think we just perhaps need to take that moment of pause and just clarify that, and also perhaps have a look at the reserve elements, and there may be some other elements in there like the Food Innovation Centre and things like that that we may want to pick up on to make sure that they're included in this. Trevor, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to come in, or has Emma covered it for you?
Chairman, I was even going to say that within policy, as set by the council, is actually referring you back to the delegations. So with any of your reserves, they would be used within policy, within delegation, as already defined in the cold light of day by the council. So that's what that comment means, but that would apply even if that comment wasn't written in the recommendation, because the expenditure would only happen consistent with the delegations that already exist.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. Debbie, you've got your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know if it helps, but we don't spend directly from reserves. So reserves are just a way of funding spend, and any spend that we want to spend either is in the revenue budget and we would have to come back and ask for other revenue budget, or in the case of these, particularly around the waste, it's likely to be potentially vehicles, etc. That would come through the capital programme and we would have to ask for additions to the capital programme. This is a way of funding that spend, so that would, you know, we wouldn't spend directly from those reserves, if that gives you any comfort.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Debbie. So yeah, okay, so we're saying at this point in time we'd like this one to just give some more thought to and not progress this at this point in time, if I've understood what Trudy said correctly, with a view of just having that greater understanding. And also just reviewing the elements of where we put the funding within the reserve. So hopefully that can come back next cabinet, hopefully with a way in which we can take this forward that we're comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, there may be more we want to put, you know, different ones we want to put in as well. So I think that'll give us that moment in time to think of that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions for anyone? Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention on the bridge maintenance reserve on page 53, it just says there is 330,000 for Marriotts Way bridges. I think that should include the BVR bridges as well. This was discussed at March Cabinet, and I just want that noted on there that it should be BVR as well. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you for reminding us of that one. I think we perhaps need to come back to that one just when we've dealt with item 4. Perhaps we then come back to Trudy just to deal with that one. So item 4 is to, what's the phrase, not go with, defer, bring it back to next council next cabinet meeting. So we defer that one. Do we need to vote on that, or can we just defer it?
I think you need to vote on it, Chairman.
Okay, so back to you then, James. Roll call, please. We're keeping you busy tonight.
You are, certainly indeed. Councillor Copplestone.
I would like to defer number 4, please. Thank you.
Councillor Empsall.
Defer item 4.
Councillor Hempsall.
Defer item 4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
Defer item 4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Defer, please.
Councillor Vincent.
Defer.
And Councillor Wymark.
Defer, please.
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, thank you for that, James. That just brings us back then to the penultimate item on that table at 2.2, where it talks about bridge maintenance reserve. Trudy, do you want to just pick this up?
I will pick it up. I mean, we've got no more to vote on this paper, but I did raise this earlier today with Rodney, and yes, it does include both the Marriotts Way and the BVR, and they are in effect split, but it has been explained to me how that there hasn't been a policy, a way of splitting it, but Rodney has come up with a solution to it, and I just wonder if you want that circulated or how you want to take that forward, because there isn't a vote here, but he has come up with a calculation which looks actually quite a reasonable way of splitting those two, if that's what we want to do. So I don't know how we take that forward. And the other question we had of Rodney today was regarding the fact that we've got two SIL reserves, and he has given me quite a thorough explanation of why that is the case as well. So again, I don't know if that's something, how we take that forward to explaining to either Cabinet or how you want to do that, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. I would defer to the monitoring officer, but I would suggest probably that both of those need to come back with the report for the next Cabinet meeting with the additional reserves. Would that be the appropriate way to deal with that, Emma?
I would love to be able to answer you, but I completely lost connection. So I lost you when you when Debbie was coming to speak. So I'm going to ask Trevor.
If you say yes, the answer is yes.
I'm not giving you an answer. I'm going to delegate upwards to Trevor.
Yeah.
Over to you, Trevor.
Chairman, if I can support
Please
what
do.
you just if I can support what you've just said, it would be appropriate to bring that back to the next Cabinet, please. Thank you.
That's great. That just explains it then. Why they're separate and how we need to separate the bridges. That'd be great.
Okay, thank you for that. So if we bring that back with the additional new reserves for the next Cabinet meeting, that'd be great. Okay, that moves us on then to item 14, the Treasury Management Q2 report. Is this you again, Rodney?
It is indeed. This is just a report to note, though, very much under the Treasury Management Strategy, we're required to report back to yourselves on the position for our investments and borrowings. Very much we just set out in the table in the report about what our investments are. At the end of September, we had £43 million worth of investments. Over the past 6 months, we've had no need to borrow. We've actually likely to overachieve our income target for investment income, and I've got no breaches of the potential indicators to report. So overall, it's good news. We're very much still in line with our Treasury Management Strategy. The only thing I do wish to highlight is that at the start of the pandemic, we did hold more money with Barclays, our main bankers, than we would normally like to do. That was very much to ensure that we had plenty of money available in order to support our businesses as and when they needed it. But very much this report is to note, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Rodney. Trudy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think we need to labour this. The having more money in the Barclays account at that time, we needed to get money out the door as quick as we possibly could. So I don't think anyone would complain about that. So I'm happy to put forward recommendations 1 and 2. Okay,
thank you for that, Trudy. I'll second those for speed. I do have a question though, or something that I'd just like some more information on. On table 2.1, there's a line that says charitable organisations where there's £3,000. I believe this relates to actually an element in my wards, and if I could just have some information on that, then I'll see if I can find out where that sits and see if we can unravel that one a little bit as to who that actually belongs to, if that's possible, please. Are there any other questions and any other comments that anyone wants to make? No, can't see any. So over to you, James, around the 2 recommendations there.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you for that, James. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 15, being the Strategic Performance and Finance Report for quarters 1 and 2. Is this you, Hannah?
Yes, I'll take this one. Thank you, Chair. Give Rodney an opportunity to breathe for a couple of minutes, but I will be asking him for some support on the numbers once we get to that section of the paper. So what you've got in front of you this evening is the first new look quarterly strategic and finance reporting. I'll give an overview of some of the highlights from the performance element of the report, and then Rodney will give an overview of some of the key finance elements. So in terms of the performance measures in front of you, these are the performance measures that were agreed by Cabinet as part of the delivery plan for this financial year. The performance report has been updated in terms of its layout to more clearly identify some of the progress against the delivery measures and also provide some more context on the progress to date. Some measures have been given targets for year-end success, and for those that have been given targets, we've provided a RAG status to show the progress we're making. A large proportion of the measures are currently being baselined for this year or have a year-end target, and we'll report on those in Q4. For those targets which we have identified a RAG status for, 7 are showing as green, so that means they're on target to meet their end year success, and 4 are currently showing as red and not on target for this quarter. In terms of some of the performance highlights identified within the report, we've secured a significant amount of external funding for the past 2 quarters, which is amounting to over £5 million. Over 2.7 of this is from the Getting Building Fund to support Freedom Innovation Centre, and the remaining is from MHCRG for the Next Steps Accommodation Programme and also some funding for our COVID response and economic recovery initiatives. Over the past 2 quarters, the Council has also supported over 2,000 residents through our prevention services. As you'll see in Q2, the figures for support has gone down due to the level of complexity to support these cases. But as we work towards the next quarter and the work continues for our COVID response, this number is anticipated to rise. In terms of environmental measures, in Q1, the percentage of household waste recycled has increased, and it shows nearly a 3% increase in the recycling rate compared to last year. Whilst the national average for rate of recycling is around 44.7%, Broadland is actually achieving around 52.5%, showing that Broadland is consistently delivering a higher recycling rate compared to the national average. There are some areas for improvement identified in the report, with the Q2 target for missed bins not having been reached. However, work is currently underway with the contractor to ensure that crews are well trained and able to respond to new routes, and this will also be included as a measure that the contractor is evaluated against in the future. In terms of the percentage of successful interventions for homelessness, we have seen a performance drop in the last quarter. However, the main reason for this has been the significant increase in the usual number of people in temporary accommodation as a result of the pandemic. And great work is currently underway within the team in terms of the development of the best-in-class housing system. And again, there's a report on this on the agenda later on in this meeting. Also, just wanted to provide a quick update on risks. So risks and the risk management policy was agreed by Cabinet in August. Work's been underway to develop a draft risk register for the Council, and that draft risk register went through last audit committee's meeting, and following some very helpful feedback from the audit committee, we'll be going back in this month for final review and will feature as part of the regular Q3 updates and ongoing updates to Cabinet, so that Cabinet can have oversight of the key risks of the Council. I'm now going to pass over to Rodney to draw attention to any key bits from a financial perspective from the report.
Thank you very much, Hannah. So I'd like to draw your attention to page 68 of the report, where we just give you a summary of the position at the end of September for the revenue budgets. Very much at this point in time, we have got a few minor underspends, which is good news. So there's no overall pressure on the budgets. The one that does stand out is about this, what we've called in the report, 1.3 million of unspent COVID-19 funding. I think that's probably a not very good phrasing of it. What this is the COVID funding that wasn't budgeted. Obviously, we have been spending this money in response to the COVID pandemic. So really, it's a variance cause because it wasn't budgeted for at the start of the year, because obviously we weren't expecting the COVID pandemic. But obviously, by the end of the year, we will have spent all the funding to support our residents and our businesses. The other element is very much the capital programme. So far this year, we would have expected to spend about 1.2 million on our capital programme. We're currently about £500,000 on our capital programme. So we are slightly under where we'd ideally like to be with our capital programme, but there's still the opportunity to catch up by the end of the year. And that was all I was going to say on the budget position.
Okay, so thank you for that, Rodney. Is there anything Jonathan or Trudy wants to pick up on as it sits in your portfolios before I go to the questions and things? Jonathan?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, obviously, this has been a very difficult year for everyone in the country, and it's not just the councils, it's all businesses and everything like that. And I feel that the way that as a council we have worked has been very, very positive, and we have helped a lot of people. And I think the information in here is where there's probably more we could shout about how well we've done with our support networks for people, and how people have been pleased with our obviously with their council on how we've helped people. Obviously, when we decided what things we were going to look at on performance and everything like that, we weren't really expecting COVID, which has obviously changed everything. I still think that the staff, you know, the retention and the work levels with the staff and everything like that, what we've got, the sickness, and when you look at the performance of the staff, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think that's something we can focus on positively, even if some of the other parts which have obviously been affected by COVID will make a change on that. But overall, I think to be in a good place in this difficult year is brilliant.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. Trudy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I know Judy has as well. First of all, there is cabinet to note on the here, so I don't know if it's if I put both of them through when we're finished, note 1 and 2 on page 66. But anyway, first of all, in 3.8, there's just, I think it's probably to do with rounding up, but the paragraph says there's an adverse variance of 1.2 million. Actually, looking at the figures, is 1.1 million. So if we could just get that amended, as I said, it is probably to do with rounding, I would imagine. They normally are.
Yes, it would be to do with rounding, but
yeah.
we can get that corrected.
Yeah, because it would look better. It just looks like it doesn't add up at the moment. So, but there's just a couple of things really around the measurements here. And I think one of the things to note is in 3.18, regarding the number of working days taken to progress new claims for housing benefit. Now, we have a target of 7 days, and it went up initially to 5.4 days, and we had so many more applications. It's remarkable we didn't go over the 7 days, to be honest. And now the performance has gone right back down to 4.7 days. So I think the team needs to be massively congratulated on that. And the other thing I just wanted to note, really, because it's changed really of yesterday, 3.23 around the collection rate of council tax. And we then mention different ways of enforcement to actually talk to the people that don't talk to us. We want to help everybody as best we possibly can, but sometimes people won't communicate. So in ordinary terms, at times we'd normally go to summonses and so on. We haven't been able to do that for 6 months. We are able to do that now, but actually, as a council, we've made the decision we won't be doing that at the moment. We will put that off until the new year to give people more time. I think that is the right thing to be doing at this moment. As a cabinet, we've had a discussion, and I really don't think we should be chasing that at the moment. So although we haven't got a huge amount of non-collection of council tax, and it is something we need to do for all residents, is make sure if you should pay, you need to pay. We don't want to make things even worse for people at this time. Other than that, subject to everyone else having their say, obviously I would put forward recommendations 1 and 2 on page 66.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. And I think, yeah, you picked up on a couple of very important things there around the recovery of collection of the council tax. My understanding that the debt at this point in time is somewhere in the region of £650,000.
That's correct.
So it's just something we need to monitor, but it does feel appropriate, bear in mind the the times that we're in to try and encourage people to talk to us and see where we can help at this stage. So
yeah, I mean, we collect 87 million. So when you put that in perspective, the 650,000, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it feels the right thing to do, doesn't it? And then again, yeah, the phenomenal work that you highlighted there that the team are doing around the benefits and handling all of those extra ones, but still doing it within the 7-day turnaround, and getting back down to 4.7 is a phenomenal thing for them to do. Okay, so I've got Fran, then Judy, and then Joe. So Fran, did you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Actually, it follows on well from what Trudy said. Obviously, with the housing team, you know, the way they've worked to help support our residents has been fantastic. I mean, they've been overwhelmed really with the additional increase in demand, really, which is you know, phenomenal that they've actually got on top of it and worked well. And the communities team as well, I think they've done a wonderful job actually supporting our vulnerable residents. And I'm sure they will again in the next lockdown we're going into. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the how we secured the money from the MHCLG for next steps accommodation. Obviously that will work as part of our housing offer. So we can once again support our most vulnerable people, most vulnerable residents, as we should. So it's a wonderful thing that we're going to be doing, and I look forward to it starting soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Fran, over to you, Judy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, whilst everyone's thanking staff, I'd like to thank obviously all the waste staff, and I'd also like to thank the regulatory staff and the EHOs, who I know have been working very hard at this time and supporting our other districts. I'm being very picky here, I'm sure. However, I do feel a bit aggrieved about 3.20. It's the number of verified missed bins. And it says this is the first time we reported this measure. Well, it probably is the first time you might have put it in a report like this, but it's something that's looked at quarterly. So there's no real surprises, apart from a surprise for me that I hadn't been told that there was all this problem with a crew not finding bins. So, but I just think that it's really making a lot of a rather non-event, and I think the normal, the 27 per 100,000 is a very good performance for waste collection. So yeah, and they say they're trying to establish a baseline, but and it will be used as one of the performance indicators of the earlier contract. Well, it already is. It's my understanding. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. So
I'm sure you're not.
And my other comments on page, I think 102, 104 and 105 were a bit in the same vein. I'm very supportive of having a measurement and seeing how we do against it. But the wording on the top of 102, the recycling and partnership team are currently awaiting confirmation on future work streams. Well, they didn't put anything forward until the last environmental excellence panel, so it rather implies they've been waiting a long while. And I think there was another one as well. Oh, and the one that I'm pleased to see in here, as I asked for it to be included, on 105, was the kgs of residual waste collected per household, which I think will be a handy measure going forward. Now that one hasn't been reported on to the best of my knowledge and belief, but otherwise that's just my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Judy. Joe, I think you were next on the list.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, thank you for the report, everybody. I just want to go to the growing the economy section, which is on page 72, 3.15. We've seen a huge amount of support, and I want to thank the economic development team and the finance team for an amazing job since March. We've given almost 29 million pounds to 2,500 of our businesses, and the support that they've got is amazing. Also, the business rate relief, which is in 3.15 to the retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, that has been a huge benefit in these difficult times. They've done an amazing job, and I'm asking them to really sort of dig deep, because obviously we've now got to get these new local restriction support grant out, and we've seen the largest package of emergency support in post-war history to help protect, create and support our jobs. So it's hugely important, and thank you to everybody. In 3.16, we're doing a great job getting the 2.7 million pounds of Getting Building Fund, which has been secured by the new Anglia LEP, and it's great that we're working really closely with the LEP, and also the 430,000 from the Norfolk Strategic Fund, which is going to do our enterprise facilitation. I'd also like to thank the communities team with help for the Kickstart scheme to help young people into jobs. So thank you all for your great work, and thank you in advance for the work that's coming up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Jo. Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on the report itself is now really starting to get to the place where we need it to be. Obviously, there's still some elements that I think we need work doing on it. Some bits just don't work for me at the moment. So the pie chart is at 3.10, just doesn't really tell us anything. It would be useful to know what the 7 red measures are, what the 4 red measures, the 7 green measures are, for example. So I think there's elements in here where this is good, and I note from the SEAC minutes at item 12 that it is still talking about homing this report and getting this report to a better place. So I think it might be useful to perhaps have a informal session with Cabinet to give some more feedback on this and just help trying to get it to a better place. And again, just really perhaps for sort of an example of perhaps some of the things that we need to pick up on and just make sure we're in the right place. On page 102, the comments identified around household food waste recycling shows that the tonnage is 88.37 higher, and I can't perhaps believe that it's really exactly the same on page 104 for garden waste at 88.37 tonnes higher. So I think there's some elements there we just need to make sure correlate in the right way, and also just picking up, I think, on Judy's point around the priorities, because I think even you, Hannah, when you summarised it and fed it back to us, you picked up on measures that were more important to us, like measure 25 and measure 26, rather than the measure 29, which is more about the contract management. So I think there's some learning in there for us all around what is important for us to see, and also the bits to collect and have there when we need them and be able to draw on them as well. So I think it'd be useful if we could have that sort of session. So perhaps that's something we can pick up later in the week, Hannah, and see where we can schedule that in later in the month so that it can then be incorporated into future reports. I know, Ken Kelly, you've got a question you wanted to ask on the report as well.
Yes, thank you, Leader. On page 70, Thorpe Lodge refurbishment, I noticed there that the project's on hold. What I'd like to have is an update from who's responsible for it, especially with probably in the next 3 months, officers and the staff will be returning probably, God willing. I'd just like to know that actually Thorpe Lodge will be a fit and proper place for them to come back to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Ken. Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing here is the wording here, because what we're looking at and what I can really assure you is as staff are able to come back into the buildings and as we look at the new ways of working, then they definitely will be safe. They will be, yeah, we will do everything that we can as far as making the environment as safe as possible. But also this is more around the future and where we sit with, as you know, the accommodation and what's the best for our future outlook on the way in which we refurbish Thorpe Lodge and get it suitable for what we need. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add on that one. Emma, you've got your hand up.
Oh, blimey. Yeah, I'm still in holiday mode, sorry. So in terms of Thorpe Lodge refurbishment, that does come in within my area of responsibility. The reason that's been put on hold, as you said, Chairman, is twofold. One, our focus has been on making sure that the environment for staff that are in the office is COVID secure, and that remains our utmost priority. Thorpe Lodge refurbishment covers, from memory, it's aircon, it's looking at the toilets, and it's looking at the shower facilities, and that's very much something that we need to look at, as you say, Chairman, in light of what the wider view for accommodation looks like. So that's why that's on hold at the moment, because it would be, we don't want to spend money that unnecessarily, and we need to make sure we do it in the right way. So as you say, that will be looked at as part of that project.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Emma. Okay, so if there are no other elements, that we've got the recommendation to note at page 66, 1 and 2, which I think, Trudy, you proposed, so I'll second that. James, over to you to do the roll call.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Ensel.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Weinmark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you for that, James. Okay, so that then moves us on to item 16, page 110, which is the Municipal Bond Agency Framework Agreement. That just rolls off the tongue. So I'm guessing, Rodney, as you've had a bit of a pause and a break, you're ready to go? No. Oh, okay.
Me.
Oh, it's Debbie. Okay. No wonder he's looking smug. So over to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, hopefully this won't take too long, but back in February, when members agreed the Treasury Management Strategy, officers said they would bring back a report, this report around the Municipal Bonds Agency. It's potentially an alternative to the PWLB for a source of borrowing, should the council need to borrow. Obviously at the moment it doesn't, but what it does do is allow us to do that if we sign up to this framework. Hopefully they would achieve a lower interest rate than the PWLB, which tends to be the main source of local authority funding, borrowing, the source of funding. What I would say is that there is a slight risk, and just draw members' attention to that, in signing up to the framework and actually borrowing, and it's only when a council borrows from this that the proportionate and joint guarantee comes into being. So if there was a default, and there has never been a local authority that has defaulted on borrowing previously, but if that should occur, then the borrowers from the Municipal Bonds Agency would potentially be liable for a proportionate, the same proportion as they've borrowed of the default that occurs. So that is a potential risk. It is extremely low risk, but I do want to draw members' attention to this. So the report is asking for Cabinet to agree, hopefully, for us to sign up to this framework. By signing up now, it means that if we do need to be in a position to borrow and decide that at the time they offer very good rates, then we can do that a lot quicker than if we haven't signed up and had permission already from you to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Debbie. Trudy, anything you wish to add?
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, we did adopt this for the Treasury Management Strategy. So I'm quite happy to put the recommendation forward. I do have a question though. What is the difference to being a shareholder and not being a shareholder? I must admit, I thought the shareholders would probably take on the risk, not the people borrowing the money. I just wondered what the difference is, that's all.
Yes, so when the Municipal Bonds Agency was originally formulated, they asked for if local authorities wanted to become shareholders. That was a decision that people took, and that was a way of financing basically the Municipal Bonds Agency and the work they've done to get the agreements and everything up and get it up and working. So that's the difference. They are literally shareholders. That doesn't mean they're liable for any of defaults or anything like that on the loans. They provided the funding basically to get the organisation up and working.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I'm happy to put forward recommendation 81A on page 117.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. Are there any questions for anybody? No. Can I just, for clarity, Debbie, just ask the one, talk about this is really setting us up, should we need to in the future borrow, gives us an option rather than it has to be these people, I'm assuming. So we have the choice of the board, or we have the choice this one, depending upon how we feel and interest rates at that given point in time. Would that be correct, rather than having to just go with this framework?
Yes, absolutely. This is just one tool really in the toolbox. There are other alternative sources like PWRB or even other local authorities. And what we would do at the time when we need to borrow, depending on the length of the duration of the loan that we're seeking and rates that are available at the time, you know, we will then see what's the most favourable rate out there. So it's not a default that we would go to use these, but just as I say, an option.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll second that so that we can move things forward. Is there any other questions? No, it doesn't look like it's prompted anything. So with you, James, for the roll call, please.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsell.
4.
Councillor Hempsell.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you for that, James. Okay, so that now moves us on then to item 17, best in class housing offer and draft allocation scheme, starting at page 121. So is this Mike Eugene? Yeah, got his hand up. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just start it for you. Victoria and Richard have done all the work. I just wanted to, I guess, set the scene. This is a long report, and I'm sorry about that, but I think it reflects the kind of the potential opportunities and change that this report brings. We've had a huge amount of work over the last few months to really look at a best-in-class housing model and reflecting on housing as one of the real core functions of a district council. And I think building on the strength that Broadland Council have had, and certainly the opportunity that I've had to work with Broadland to really build on supporting the most vulnerable residents. I just thought the feasibility study, when we brought it back to South Norfolk and Broadland, really looked at two sovereign councils who could still retain their own sovereignty, but with one officer core, work together to build efficiencies and economies of scale. And I think this report, for me, certainly does that. We've still got the two policies and still two councils work together, but the way the officers can work together to build resilience and build some efficiency within the internal and the systems that we can build up really emphasise just how two councils, one team can work well. And I will just like to point as well, working with the LGA who supported the Campbell TICL to help fund this work for the feasibility for this work, but also the working group between officers and members. And I'm sure Councillor Wymark will jump in, but the way that officers and members have worked together on this project has been absolutely fantastic, and it's really filled me with the motivation to continue. I know myself as the AD bringing officers on board, but also Councillor Weinmark bringing members on board has really worked well on this particular case. So I'll hand over Victoria to lead us through the rest of the report.
Okay, Victoria, over to you, please, and good evening to you.
Evening. Thank you, Mike, for that introduction. So good evening, everyone. This is presenting to you the findings of the Housing Service Review work and the proposed overall direction for the Housing Service, which we're asking members to note and endorse at present. We're also taking forward the draft allocation scheme, as this is very much in need of updating. So this is being presented to Cabinet for their recommendation to Council to adopt the scheme. As Mike was saying, the driver for the project, which we carried out in partnership with the LGA consultants and the Joint Member Working Group, was to design a service that was innovative, effective, but also clear and transparent for the team and our residents. And as the project progressed, it became clear that there was an imperative to design a service that will meet the challenges of COVID for now and for the foreseeable future. And we've provided detail in section 3 of the report of the current demand. And as we approach a second national lockdown period, we don't expect that demand to reduce anytime soon. So in terms of the overall project findings, the consultants noted the council has good outcomes in terms of preventing and relieving homelessness. However, this is mainly facilitated through the social housing sector. And in the current COVID landscape, this isn't going to be sustainable in the long term. But we also have a respective preventative approach, and this is something that we'd like to develop further. So as a result, the best-in-class housing offer was produced, including a comprehensive accommodation pathway model. And the model lays out how residents and the council can resolve housing need at various stages, right from encouraging residents to access self-service advice and to think about their future options before they go into crisis, to ensuring that those with more complex needs can receive extra help to resolve homelessness and to keep that support going to prevent any future housing crisis. And key to this model is the allocation scheme. And within the scheme, there's just a couple of aspects I'd like to touch on this evening. And the first is the process by which we're suggesting social housing is allocated. And we're proposing a hybrid scheme in which the majority of applicants can exercise choice through a choice-based letting system, meaning applicants can take an active role in looking for a new home. We would also offer assisted bidding and alternative communication methods for those who need additional support, and have a system of direct lets for specific properties. For example, where there's an urgent rehousing requirement. When we have adapted properties becoming available, we can explore targeted advertising of these or direct lets to ensure the property meets the needs of the household. And this is something that was raised as part of the public consultation responses we received, and also as part of the South Norfolk Cabinet meeting yesterday. And we're going to be doing some work to examine the letting of adapted properties so we can understand the circumstances if we can't match a property to a household on the list. We're also proposing to continue with the nominations process where more than 5 new build properties are becoming available on a development. And applicants will be able to bid for that development and they will be matched to a suitable property available. And that means the applicant has still been able to make a choice in where they live, but the council is able to best manage the letting of the properties coming through, and it's ensuring that those in the most need have access to them. So in terms of the housing list, we're proposing 1 point of access across Broadland and South Norfolk through a single IT system. And this means a consistent approach for the housing team. When bidding for properties, applicants can see what is available across both districts and can place bids on those properties. However, properties would be allocated firstly to those in the district in which the property is located, and then by priority banding. If at that point the property isn't let, it will be offered to applicants in the other district, and again that would follow the priority bands. The caveat to this would be where properties have a Section 106 or local lettings agreement, as that would apply at all times. And what this approach means is we can steer away from having any empty properties in our district that would make a home for someone. It reduces the risk of antisocial behaviour and provides a bit of mobility for residents between the 2 districts. So the report was presented to the Wellbeing Panel in October, and there were a number of corrections to the allocation scheme that were requested. So these corrections have been made. We've also subsequently had a period of public consultation, and 75 of the 184 responses we received were from residents of Broadland, and an average of 85% were in favour of the proposals contained within the allocation scheme. So the full responses are being reviewed to be presented to Council and also to be incorporated into the Equality Impact Assessment. But just to summarise, we have a number of projects from the overall accommodation pathway to develop and take forward, but we're requesting the allocation scheme is adopted so we can make a start on this model and ensure that Broadland is in the best position possible to tackle COVID-related housing demand. And we will do this by giving staff clarity and efficiency in their approach, and for our residents, encouraging resilience and sustainability for those with a housing need and providing support for those who are more vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, for taking us through that. Fran, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I just want to echo, well, what Mike has said about this was a real collaboration. There was really good working with the members and officers and our members in South Norfolk as well to actually sort of get this in the right place. It was a really good piece of work. I mean, Victoria kicked off. I mean, she won the bid really, get Campbell Tickell, which is fantastic. I mean, they did a great piece of work. I mean, some of the things they identified, I think were, well, they identified some good work and they identified some things that we were doing really not very well, really. I mean, some of the things I took from their report, they were saying that we were passive, not proactive. We were haphazard in the way we worked. One of the things that really hurt in some ways was that they wrote it was a race to the bottom. And we weren't transparent, as Victoria said. The way we're going to work now, if this is adopted, and it will work with other policies too, is that we will address all those things. We will be transparent. It will be clear for our residents as to their pathway through this. We'll finesse this as we go on, so that the front door will get better, so that we can support people more. Particularly, prioritising the most vulnerable people in our community, people who are escaping from domestic abuse, ex-looked after children, veterans and their wives who need accommodation. So these are the people we want to look after, and we want to look after everyone as much as we can, but we want to prioritise the people who need our support most. I know we've been going through a process where we've been going through cleaning the register, because there's been a lot of people who've been on there for far too long, to be honest, far too long. I mean, Richard could give you some figures if you want, as Victoria can too, I'm sure. But some people have been on there for 10, 15 years and they probably don't even need a property anymore. But obviously within this, we've got a review process. So we will review properly. So we'll ensure that people who don't need to be on our register aren't there, and even when people come to us and they're looking for a property, it may be that they're in a position whereby they can actually purchase a property, but they didn't actually know that. But we can help them in that regard. So there's lots and lots of different facets here. So I'd like to commend this to everybody, and the recommendations as in 1 and 2, as on page 121 and 122. So thank you to all the team really for their hard work.
Okay, thank you for that, Fran. Trudy, you wanted to comment, followed by Lana?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to congratulate everybody with this, because I have to say how this has progressed through has been, I think, exemplary. For me, the turning point of actually really appreciating the work that had gone in and understanding this whole housing offer was the member briefing, and just seeing the passion from the officers presenting it, how important it was to them. So this is the way to bring a report through, I think. So congratulations.
Thank you, Trudy. Lana?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to echo really what Trudy and Fran have said. I think it's brilliant. I just have one tiny question, in that in ACOL, this is a sort of ward issue. There have been sometimes issues with turning properties around. So does this system actually allow us to keep on top of registered housing providers when they perhaps leave slightly too long a gap between a property becoming vacant and then it coming back onto the lettings market again?
Okay, thank you for the question, Lana. Is that one for you, Richard, or one for you, Victoria?
I think
Richard's got his hand up. Richard, do you want to come in?
It, but this is about partnership, isn't it, Richard?
It is about partnership, and I think it's more that since coming into the role, I've worked incredibly hard in making sure that we have a really close relationship with landlords. The allocations policy is not a standalone resolution to those issues that can sometimes come up. The quick turnaround and easy access to our residents through the CBL process will help towards that. But really, what we've really been able to do through the COVID process is really embed our relationship. And just today, I've sent them another email today to see how they can further help us with helping people within our temporary accommodation further within this next lockdown. So it's a case of building those relationships closer and closer so we can find out why they are taking that long to turn around, what the reasons are, and then at least we can communicate that to members, because there may be justified reasons for that, but equally there may not be, and we need to work out why.
Okay, thank you for answering that one, Richard. Okay, so I think again, just to pick up the points that were made there, that that this does demonstrate very clearly that through the one team, the supports of the two councils can benefit the residents of the two councils and get things in the right place. So through this, we will see better outcomes. More homes going to those that are in greater need, and the reduction, by the sounds of it, of the void times or the void spaces. So it seems like a win-win-win, which is excellent. So I'm very pleased to see the work that the officers have done in bringing this through. And as Trudy mentioned, that the briefing for members was very, very well received, and it just got them into a really good place and space and understanding in the way in which it will be delivered into the future. So thank you so much for bringing this one forward in this way. I'll second Fran's recommendations at 10.1 and 10.2. If there's no other questions, which I can't see any hands or anything. So James, over to you for the roll call.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Coplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you for that, James. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 18, the Housing Standards Enforcement Policy at page 315. So we're racking through the pages now. Okay, so who's picking the Mike? Yeah, I can see your hand up now. So over to you, Mike, if you could take us through this report.
Thank you, Chairman. Following the last one, it's very difficult to write a report about housing enforcement, which is exciting to read. So apologies for that. This report is a really nuts and bolts about housing enforcement. It's come from changes to electrical regulations. The stuff that the housing standards team do is some of it is incredibly technical, and what we're doing, we've kind of split up the enforcement part two. We've got this policy here, which is the kind of nuts and bolts of technical details, and we need this sort of level of wording in here, because if we're challenged in court, etc., we need to be very clear with lawyers. What we're going to be doing is later in the year, early next year, is bringing in a more discretionary enforcement paper, which will look at some of the discretionary stuff, which is perhaps a bit more interesting. But the report here is fundamentally based on the core nuts and bolts of the statutory functions that the housing standards team have to do. It details a range of measures that we can do, and very few of this is brand new. We've just kind of brought the whole lot together in various different elements of it. And just to really bring that enforcement policy, so we've got a very clear remit for officers to be able to work and to enforce the law. And with all housing standards enforcement, this is about supporting landlords where we can, but absolutely making it clear that we're setting a bar at Broadland Council that we will not tolerate poor standards of housing, because if you're a private sector landlord, absolutely work with us to support people in need, but comply with the law. So this is kind of what this report's about. I won't go through in detail, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Back to you, Fran.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I think Mike said it all really. I mean, Kevin Philcox presented this to us before, and obviously he's really on his game. He knows exactly what he's doing. I've got no doubt at all with the conversation I've had with Kevin, and I think Mike's very lucky to have him, actually. I think it's a really good report. As Mike said, it brings together a number of previous reports and updates because of the electrical regulations. And I would just propose recommendation 1 that we consider and approve it as it stands on page 315. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Fran. Joe, you've got your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Mike, there has been a huge number of changes for landlords in the private rented sector over the last 5 years. I just wondered, are you working, Mike, with local landlords associations like Eastern Landlords and the National Register of Landlords at all? Because in the first instance, I know this is all regulated, but I'd like to think the council were educators rather than enforcers in the first instance. Yeah, if you could just answer that, please, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cobbleton. I mean, certainly the one thing that that we will be doing more of, and it is a much more proactive response. The 4 E's that I don't know if Nick's still on cabinet, but the 4 E's that we work towards is all about education first, right through to enforcement at the end. So absolutely, and we will be. We are already working with the Eastern Landlord Association, both with Kevin's team and Richard's team. But that's something that we absolutely want to progress. And where we have had, and perhaps we fell down a bit in the past, is when we've had changes in actually making sure we communicate that too. Because, as I say, we want to bring landlords with us early and bring them in. So that's certainly something that's on the agenda for 2021.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Is that okay, Joe? Yep. Are there any other questions or any other comments that anyone wants to make? I think we've probably covered it all by the looks of it. So if I second the recommendation on page 138 at 8.1. And also, again, just reiterate what's been said, that pick up Mike's point that it's a very dry subject, but it's been pulled together here very well for us in a very concise report that has everything we need at the front there and all the things that we may want to read later on in the appendices, all in one place. So thank you for that. So
just before bed, Chairman.
Indeed. So I think, as ever, Lee knows how to present her reports to us in a way that makes us smile with the bits we have to read and realise the bits that we also have to read, but we can take more time on those. So that's good. So moving on then to the vote. James, with you for the roll call, please.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you, James. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 19, planning enforcement plan and strategy at page 344. Looking around, seeing who's picking this up. Oh, I can see you now, Stuart. You've moved on my screen. So over to you, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a number of brief updates to the report. Members will be aware that it was considered by Place Shaping Panel and Overview and Scrutiny, who made a number of recommendations. Predominantly these relate to the strategy, which is on page 355, where it's recommended we include a number of headings in relation to the enforcement options to make it clearer to customers as what stages those relate, and also to include a flow chart which provides an overview of the enforcement process and at what point the different options apply. We also recommended, in addition to providing trade-in for members, we also make that available to parish councils. In terms of the background to the report, there's a lot to add. Members will be aware that the review was following an audit report and also proposals in the development plan. It's really to update the current policy which Broadland District Council has, and it builds on that to continue to provide a customer focused service and a proactive service. It's intended to continue to provide members with regular updates in terms of the actions on different cases, and also to provide some additional training as we move this forward. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Lana, anything you want to add to this?
No, I'm just grateful to members to have taken such an active interest in this paper, and to Ovu Scrutiny for taking it ahead of schedule, which was very kind of them. So subject to the tweaks and tiny amendments and sort of optical aids to the report itself and how it's presented, I just wanted to ask Cabinet to approve use of the planning strategy at Appendix 2 and the enforcement strategy at Appendix 2 and the enforcement plan at Appendix 1. I'd like to move that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lana. Are there any questions for anyone? No, can't see any. Again, just pick up on that. For speed, I'll just second those on page 348, items 8.1 and 8.2. So thank you again. So let's go to the roll call, James.
Chairman, is 8.2 subject to the recommendations suggested by the place shaping panel? The inclusion of the heading in the flowchart?
I think it is, because that's what I moved.
I think that's what Lana said.
Sorry,
and I think
to clarify.
Yeah, and it also just picks up the other aspect. I mean, it was mentioned there about training. I think that would be useful both for the members, but also the wider audience with the town and parish councils. And it may be something we can pick up with some sort of annual parish and town meeting type activity. That may be one of the things that we run through with that. So, yeah. So thank you for clarifying that, James. So through the roll call, please.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you for that, James. Oh, we're rocking through this now. Up to page 360. How about that? So item 20, future of community grants. I see Kerry there. Is this your one, Kerry? So over to you, Kerry.
It is, yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'll just rattle through, given the speed that we've now taken up on all of these reports. I don't want to slow us down.
You're unusually quiet, Kerry. I don't know why.
Unusually quiet.
Unusually quiet, yes.
Hang on, let me take my headphones. Does that make a difference?
That makes a huge difference, yes.
Okay, I'm back to my usual not so quiet self. So I'm just going to whip through all of the bits and pieces. So this report is all about, it's kind of an overview really of all grants. I suppose what's really important to start with is how important it is to always be reviewing what we're doing in terms of community grants. It really is a very changeable market. In the kind of world that we work in all the time, day to day, different grants start up, different starts finish, and that in itself is quite confusing for communities, and we're here to support them through that, but also to make sure that what we are able to offer to them is relevant at the time, which is why we've included all of the different bits and pieces in this report. So the purpose of this report is to look a little bit at member spend, but also to look at some new options for ways that community groups can access funding, and that's where we talk about the kind of development of a whole approach to council funding. That's no major changes as such. That's just about making sure that as officers we work together to support community groups to access as much money as possible. So everyone will be aware that over the years at Broadland, several grant schemes have existed. At the moment, the member-led funding is all that remains as an internal grant that we offer. We do externally manage a grant called the Keep It Going grant, which is we have access to through some money given to local charities and voluntary sector organisations from county council funding around social isolation, and we manage that on their behalf. We'll be aware that it is a difficult time for community groups, full stop, to be honest, and we are seeing quite a lot of applications to that Keep It Going grant to do exactly as it says on the tin, and to help those groups survive this difficult time during COVID. we really, as a communities team, as a whole council, adopt what we call an asset-based community development approach to working with our communities, and that is to not think about what what groups don't have or what our communities don't have, but what they do have and how we can build on that and support it. And I think that that's what we're really managing to achieve through our member-led system, and also through the other different schemes that we're offering at the moment, or beginning to offer as of this week. We know that all of our spend should have a clear purpose and ultimately aim to reduce demand on our services. That's really important with all of the stuff that we do. And I think that members do an incredibly good job with spending their member-led funding to ensure that we're doing that. And we also finally know that evaluation is an area where we could definitely see some improvement. So on to the member-led funding. We've got sort of two halves really. Underspend is a concern for some, and overspend is a concern for others. So we've got a real mixed bag. Overall, the fund itself is underspent, but we know that some members could spend their grant, I'd say twice over, but many tell me 10 times over. A lot of people are looking for additional funding, and the proposals put forward to members today seek to offer some opportunity where members aren't able to spend for those members that can't to access that. So the proposal that is being put forward is that at the end of January, members receive or get 1 month to apply for any leftover funding to spend in their own wards. So that allows for sort of an ebb and flow of grants to move around as and when necessary. That moves the deadline back just 1 month to what members are currently used to, and this wouldn't start this financial year either. Members would be given lots of notice for this to begin from financial year 2021. And we're also looking to introduce, if members are in agreement, an ability for community members themselves to express their interest really in using the grants. So at the moment, it's solely down to members to promote the grant and to receive all of the information. One of the bits of feedback we've received is how concerned members are about the need to obtain bank details and things like that and ensure that they're collected correctly. So what we've really tried to do here is allow for the community to have an opportunity on our website to input their own details. Effectively, it's an online hello, an online can you help me out? It's an opportunity for community groups just to wave their hand and say we'd like to talk to members about their funding. It is not an ability for the community to apply for that funding aside from the member themselves. And finally, just looking at whether or not it would be possible to do some more branding around the member-led funding, which we think will give it more of a recognisable logo that people will see and recognise as something that Broadland are doing for their residents. So that's the member-led funding. That's the bulk of really what we're here to talk about. Just also to mention while I'm here, the Community at Heart Lottery, we're just 2 days away from the launch of the Community at Heart Lottery, which members approved last year, I think, or beginning of this year. That's an opportunity for groups to raise on day-to-day funding. A lot of grants that are available to communities are for capital funding. They're not for day-to-day running costs, which is an area we know people are really struggling in. So the lottery launches this Thursday at 11 o'clock, if anyone's interested and wants to come along. And finally, that community lottery, every pound that's spent, 10 pence goes back into us as a council to spend on community projects. The proposal that's being put forward to members this evening is that we use that funding to have a startup grant. So we know that a lot of groups struggle to get off the ground because a lot of the funding that's available requires those groups to be formalised, it requires them to be constituted, and it doesn't give people the chance to try something out and see if it works. We'd like members to consider whether or not we can use that 10% of funding towards this grant that would enable a little bit more flexibility for new and innovative ideas within the community. So that's it. In summary, you've got the recommendations in front of you. Appreciate any thoughts.
Okay, thank you for taking us through that, Kerry. Joe, did you want to add anything?
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Kerry, thank you very much for all the hard work that you've put into this report. This was discussed at Economic Success Panel middle of last month, and we did talk about the underspend being utilised in February. However, as a cabinet, we have discussed this and we feel we probably would like to leave the member grant scheme as it is, because we feel it would be fair and equitable to all members to receive their £500 allowance, and we would probably just leave it exactly how it is with the application process, and we don't feel, as it is quite a small grant pot relative to other things of 23,500, that it possibly needs formalised branding at this stage. I like what you say in 3.3 on page 363. The approach that your team is giving is not a money-centred approach, but focused on problem solving. And I think we all really welcome that, because I think more work can be done in the communities. There is a lot of other money out there from people like supermarkets, and someone even told me that Screwfix was sort of giving some money. And your intelligence on this, Kerry, is essential to inform members of exactly what else is out there, rather than just funding coming from council reserves. So I would like to suggest that we have sort of more member updates on this, and maybe some workshops going forward. The introduction of the startup grant, which is linked to the Community at Heart lottery, we welcome wholeheartedly. I think it's a really good idea, and we will need to sort of look at the ongoing governance of the lottery and how the startup grant is approached. But that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much, all.
Okay, thank you, Joe, for that. Are there any comments from other members of the Cabinet? Jonathan?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that, you know, we have to bear in mind that this is, you know, a newish thing. We've only had the 1 year with the grants and everything like that. I think the information that Kerry has put in the report about how the money went, if you know what I mean, what sort of groups benefited from this, was very positive, as everything like that. I think for members, to keep it the process as simple as possible, so obviously make it easier for the members, and that might include things like where we did hear from members about they didn't like taking the bank details from someone, when obviously if that could be done through a different way, that could be done. The support to find the groups is also an excellent idea, because that is where in an area the groups might be contacting the council, and the council might be saying, well, actually, if we've got them on a list, then members can then be made aware of those people. And that could be, again, another case of where some members say, oh, well, they know hundreds of people who need their support, and others who say that they can't find anybody at all. So that would be a help and everything like that. And I just think that to have someone like Kerry keeping an eye on things and seeing how it works is going to be good, because that is, like I say, the first year. The second year is this year. We'll see exactly how it is again and like that. But I don't honestly think there's a lot we really need to change at the moment, because it's still new and we're just sort of seeing how it works. And I know there are members who want more money, but I think the 500 is an excellent amount that members can give to local communities.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. And I think you've picked up on there that Joe's saying it stays as it is for the next year. Judy, you wanted to come in, followed by Lana.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to say that it is only the second year, and this year has been such a funny year that I don't think details of the grant is really out there. I'm sure when we look at it, it will be very biased towards COVID support. So I welcome that it will stay as unchanged, and we'll have time to actually embed it in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. So I've got Lana and then Steve. So Lana.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just want to thank the portfolio holder and Kerry for evolving these grants in a really thoughtful and considered way. And I just think it strikes a really lovely balance moving forward. So I'm fully in support what you've both done together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Lana. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll go through where ONS was before I mentioned the amendment. Or the amendment that ONS came up with. On each bullet point, really, where ONS was, we supported the first proposition, which was that we have an underspend. There was actually only 5 members who didn't spend, and I think you're going to find that probably whichever council you went to in this situation may be down to some capability issues. We don't know, but we do know the same thing happens in South Norfolk. When I've looked through the grants and the applications down there in great detail, you can see there's an underspend down there, and that gets put over into their community grant scheme, which is always well oversubscribed. They have a £50,000 ring fence for that, and it's really oversubscribed. That's why they deal with it. Because we don't have a community grant scheme here, the officers were recommending this month earlier. So that would then mean that if members hadn't, where you do have members like myself who could have spent it 10 times over, you're then able to put in that application, and therefore we wouldn't end up with an underspend. And where you've got situations in different communities where all of a sudden you've got a need, and in other communities you haven't, the money's getting shifted and moved at the right targeted way and in the right for the right purpose at the right point in time as well in terms of the need. So we supported fully that approach to avoid the underspend, and that would be one way of dealing with it. We think it's very pragmatic and sensible. In terms of the accessibility, the points made around the bank statements, yeah, it's going to be much more easier to support that point as well, and the input from in terms of the applications from communities. I'm actually finding the opposition, Joe, that you put forward in terms of introducing a more formalised branding and promotion of the scheme. The scheme was very successful last year, and the majority of the projects that were supported were really necessary and needed. And also, a lot of those had done their own work on obtaining other funding, and we really were needed to come in and support. They couldn't get any more funding. I know where people have gone to supermarkets, Screwfix, and the others you can go to, and they'd exhausted it, and they still needed the support. So I think the other comment as well that Judy made around ties in with ONS as well around, well, you know, we've had this for a year. We need to actually promote this more, and so that people can see what a good thing we are doing here. So the officer's recommendation to formalise the branding and promotion of the scheme, I think is a positive thing. I think it would be a retrograde negative step not to do that. I don't understand why we wouldn't do that. We did it in terms of when we go back to a cabinet meeting, last one we attended actually before COVID, Joe, when we was talking about the lottery at heart. There were some comments there about, you know, you need to promote it, you need to market it, and you moved that, and I fully supported it from ONS as well. This is no different actually. In terms of the money spent, and again, the comments that are being made around supermarkets and Screwfix, I'll give you a really good example. If you look at the Alsham grant that I gave last year, we've got the old age pensioners friendship hall there. That has volunteers, because of what happened on Meals and Wheels. We've got volunteers who are getting Meals and Wheels out, doing all kinds of things, voluntary within their community to support. That hall needed desperately an upgrade, and it also needed an upgrade in terms of its toilets and the provision of a disabled toilet. They'd gone out and raised something like £3,000. They did raffles, they did all sorts of things. They actually went to Tesco's, they went to a number of others, and they got their little pots of money in. My £500 helped them, but today they are still £1,000 short. The realities of the community out there, sources of money are actually very minute in this day and age. And I'm all for people helping themselves, but I'm all for also us giving some help in a bona fide way. Now, when we look at the South Norfolk scheme, we're talking about £1,000. When we look at their community grant scheme, it totals £100,000. We are now down to £23,500 within Broadland. It comes to 0.01% in terms of our budget. It's very tiny. So we know that there is need out there. We know that people are helping themselves. And by raising this, doubling it from the 32.5, it is needed out there. And therefore ONS, has recommended 1,000. And also we're aware of the community issue out there in terms of larger sums that are required. So the 50,000 that they got in South Norfolk, again, would seem appropriate. Are residents in South Norfolk any different from residents in Broadland? Of course they're not. And that scheme is well oversubscribed. So there is a need out there. People are helping themselves. They are going to grant bodies. They are raising as much as they can. And this is just a very tiny portion of our budget that enables us to help them as well on much needed community work and support. So again, that's why we're recommending the amendment we are there. And also why, as I said, for positive reasons, we're recommending that it does get formal branding and that we move to a formal system so that we can avoid an underspend and the money does get spent rather than have an underspend. And I'll finish there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for just sharing some of those thoughts with us and the ONS view on where things are. Are there any other comments or questions? Can't see any. Again, just perhaps bring us back to the whole principle of the member grant scheme. It was set up as a simple, easy to use, easy to access scheme for members to facilitate and deliver within their own wards. And what we've seen in the first year, and from what we understand is going on this year, it's delivered well. I think there may have been an error in the report, because I understand that while there were 5 outstanding at the end of last year, I think 2 subsequently got picked up because there was a mix-up. So I think there was only 3 grants that ended up not being paid or not being facilitated and used. So we're looking at about an underspend of just over £2,000, which is quite phenomenal if you think the amount of effort and work that's gone out by all of the members to make this work. And we hear such good news stories around what's happened and the difference that it makes. And I'm looking forward to seeing it again in broader news that's due out later this month, again, because it's going to give it that fresh kick, that fresh push, to encourage those members and those communities that haven't quite engaged with it yet to obviously get on and use the funding that is at their bequest as such to make that difference. So moving back then to the recommendations and just picking up, I think, on what Jo said, because that was a while ago that she put that forward, was that actually of the 5 recommendations, it's only recommendation 4 that remains the same, which is the introduction of a startup grant linked to the new Community at Heart lottery. As far as the existing scheme, we propose to leave the existing scheme as it is rolling forward at this point in time. And again, thank Kerry for the tremendous work that her and her team do in supporting the members in facilitating the grant and getting the grants out to the right people in the right way. I know my own particular grant got paid a couple of weeks ago, and was well received by those who are eagerly spending it as we talk to facilitate a dry courtyard for children to play in, which I'm guessing is going to become more of an asset for them, certainly as the schools and the play areas remain open through what is now another lockdown that we're facing. So there's some amazing things happening out there within our communities, and it'd be really good, say, to see some of those stories coming out through Broadland News, and hopefully that will then stimulate some additional spends and ideas that will drive things forward. So Mike, you look like you've got your hand up before I go to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to clarify, because I think a couple of points that Councillor Cobbleson made and Councillor Elmswell, the ability for community groups to log on and kind of say that hello, something seemed to resonate. What was that something that you wanted to continue with?
No, I mean, I think it comes back to the whole principle of this thing. The scheme itself is supposed to be simple and easy to use. It's supposed to be member-led. The member should take that accountability and that authority around making sure that the things are correct. And what we don't want to do, because it is a relatively small fund, is waste your time as an officer in doing those things and in spending money on branding and things where we want to focus on actually just getting it done, and providing the support in the right way. So I think those things sit in line, and that just says, let's just keep the form we've got. Let's keep the things we've got. We're starting to get the hang of using those, and leave those things as they are at this point in time. Also, as Kerry mentioned, the new lottery will provide huge support for local communities. And that's quite a nice idea of hers to bring that extra 10% in line with the startup. So I think that's a really, really good thing that we can support, and hopefully will be used by many of our community groups going forward. So yeah, just to pick up that point that you're making there, Mike. So I think what we're saying is we keep the scheme as it is at this point in time. We don't complicate things with the forms and community access and who's doing what. We just leave it with the member to make sure that they have the right information. And your question sheet is always useful. I know I made use of that this year. I wish I'd made use of it last year, but I didn't. I made use of it this year, and that was very useful to then have all the information to hand to then just input it into the form when it was required. And as I say, that then linking through to the lottery will then work quite well for us. And from a branding point of view, I mean, it may well be that the comms team do want to do something with the article that they put in the Broadland News. But again, let's not spend a whole host of resource on this, because it is something that the members are making a lot of noise about and are pushing forward. So it's one of those things that is a balanced focus on proportionate to what it is we're doing and what it is we're achieving. I think that covers all of the different bits, doesn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, thank you.
Okay, so moving then to the vote, I can't see anything else. So James, have you got what we're voting on? Are you comfortable?
Not entirely, Chairman.
Okay, how can I help you, James?
So the first bullet point is that's going to remain, the member-led ward grant system will remain unchanged.
So it remains as it is, and the funding level remains as it is. Yep.
Yeah. Bullet points 2 and
can be crossed through. That does.
Through.
Yep.
Bullet point number 4. That is as it is.
As it is. Yeah, we're looking forward to see that. Yeah, that's good.
And bullet point 5, the development of the whole council approach to community funding.
I think that's a space that's probably beyond the scope of this particular piece of work and around the member grant scheme. I think that's a wider thing that we perhaps will endorse the the whole council approach to community funding, but I'm not quite sure we know what the whole council approach to community funding actually is. So I think we
So
probably
lose that one.
need that one to come back in some other sort of guise or some other sort of way to get us into that place of what that is actually asking for. So I think that's one that probably, again, we can just delete at this point in time.
That's fine. I'm clear on what you're agreeing now. Yes.
Yeah, I did just check with Joe. Obviously, Joe made that recommendation. So have I summarised that correctly, Joe?
Yes, lovely. Happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so are we in a good place, James?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. So if you could go forward then with the roll call.
Councillor Copplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsell.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you, James, for taking us through that. That moves us on then to the next item, item 21, temporary change to housing allocation policy. So again, is this with you, Richard?
It is with me. Thank you very much, Chair.
Over to you, Richard.
Thank you. I just want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you all for your kind comments about the efforts that the officers have put in, both on the benefits and the housing side. Trust me, I'll make sure that get back to the officers. They are working incredibly hard, and to hear your kind words really does help. So thank you.
No, thank you, Richard. We do really appreciate what they're doing. So it's good. Thank you.
So the report today is to come back following a report I brought in June 2020, which was a temporary amendment to the housing policy, which basically put those people in supported accommodation who were ready to move on into independent accommodation, whereby their moving on would open up a space for someone currently in our TA if they were ready. Now that sounds very complicated, but basically it's creating throughput within the housing sector and making sure that those people in supported accommodation, if they're ready to move on, let's get them moved on as quickly as possible so it opens up a space for people in our TA. This was initially for 3 months, and Cabinet asked me to come back and report on its successes and to see whether a further extension were required. As you know, at the start of a pandemic, the government requested that we accommodated everybody through the Everybody In. This very quick time frame doubled our temporary accommodation occupancy levels. But there's two ways of looking at that. One side is an extra pressure on the team. On the other side, it's a wonderful opportunity to help a lot of people who are normally very transient through our housing sector. So the findings are largely that it has worked. Our current temporary accommodation cost has reduced from £9,000 per week at its peak down to circa £5,000 per week. We do still have circa 20 occupants within our temporary accommodation. 5 of those have already been nominated, 8 are remaining in bed and breakfast, and 9 within our own stock. B&B bed and breakfast is for our more higher risk customers. It's not our accommodation of choice, but is a necessary place and provision to utilise. Those people within B&B though are needing to go into supported, but equally may even not be suitable for supported and may be going into our housing first. And the announcement of having £1.04 million across both councils are going to allow us to put that housing first into place. So largely we are looking at those people who are remaining in B&B or within our own stock who still need to go to supported accommodation. So whilst we have achieved a lot, we haven't achieved enough. And I think it's really, it would be really useful to have a further extension up to the end of January 2021 to allow us to move those last few people, and also for us to, now I can say this, to gauge the impact of a second wave lockdown on housing sector. That ties me up really for the report.
Okay, thank you for taking us through that, Richard. Fran, is there anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I think we've been very successful in the way we've worked, and obviously Richard has done an enormous amount of work to make this successful for our residents. As he said, it will fit very nicely with the next Steps accommodation programme as that kicks in, the housing first, which will obviously give us another string to our bow. I'd like to offer an amendment to the recommendation which will fit with our other plans too, that actually in the final sentence, it says this extension will cease on the 31st of March 2021. So it takes us up to the end of this year, when we will look to actually employ, well, assuming the council agree, as an allocations policy. So hopefully that's the case. So I mean, I'd like to just recommend that to Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fran. So the slight change to the recommendation to extend the end date from the 31st of January up to the 31st of March instead, if that's deemed necessary by the team in their implementation. Again, just it saves them having to bring it back in a couple of months' time.
Particularly with the current situation, Chairman.
Indeed. So
we'll have enough to
hopefully,
do, I think.
Hopefully that's a welcome change.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Is there any other questions from anyone? I see there's some love going on in the chat, which is nice to see. No. Okay, so we have the recommendation there, so I'll second that to move that forward. Still can't see any hands, so over to you, James, for the vote.
Councillor Coplestone.
4.
Councillor Emsall.
4.
Councillor Hempsall.
4.
Councillor J. Leggett.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you, James. Okay, so moving on to item 22, I will move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information